A whisper once told the storm, "You were never meant to destroy, only to reveal what refuses to stand." And suddenly, the chaos didn't feel like an enemy anymore. It felt like truth with a louder voice. They say time heals everything, but it only exposes. It peels back illusions like old paint on abandoned walls, revealing the cracks we tried so hard to ignore. You call it a breakdown. I call it a breakthrough, wearing a disguise so convincing it terrifies the unprepared. Because not every fall is failure. Summer gravity reminding you that you've been pretending to fly without wings. The night doesn't chase the sun away. It simply proves that light is never permanent. And neither is your darkness. You fear being alone, yet it is in solitude where your truest voice echoes the loudest. Strange, isn't it? How silence can scream louder than a crowd full of empty noise. They taught you to chase dreams, but never warned you how dreams sometimes run faster when you doubt yourself. And doubt is a skilled magician. It turns possibilities into prisons and whispers. Stay where you are. It's safer here. But safety is often just a beautiful cage with invisible bars. Look closer. Every scar you carry is not a mark of damage, but a signature of survival, written in a language only the strong can read. The world will tell you to be realistic. But realism is often just fear, dressed in logic, trying to sound intelligent. You are not built to fit perfectly into expectations. You were crafted to challenge them, disrupt them, and, if necessary, break them. Even the ocean doesn't apologize for its storms. It roars, it crashes, it destroys, yet somehow it is still called beautiful. So why must you be calm to be worthy? Listen. Your story is not behind you. It is within you, waiting to be spoken with courage instead of hesitation. And maybe, just maybe, the reason life feels so heavy is because you've been carrying versions of yourself that no longer belong to you. Let them go. Because becoming isn't about adding more. It's about removing everything that was never truly you. And when you finally stand there, stripped of pretense and fear, you'll realize something quietly powerful. You were never lost. You were just hidden beneath expectations that were never yours to begin with. They say time heals everything, but what time truly does is far more ruthless and honest than that comforting illusion. Time does not step in like a gentle healer stitching wounds closed. Instead, it quietly removes the bandages we placed over truths we were never ready to face. At first, we believe we are getting better. The pain feels lighter, the memories less sharp, the nights a little less heavy. But what's really happening is not healing, its distance. And distance has a deceptive kindness. It softens the edges of reality just enough for us to breathe, yet not enough for us to fully understand. Because time has a different role. It reveals who stayed when things fell apart, and who disappeared when the weight became inconvenient. It exposes the difference between words spoken in comfort and actions taken in difficulty. It separates what felt real from what was merely convincing. Time also turns its gaze inward. It shows you the versions of yourself you once defended, choices you justified, feelings you ignored, boundaries you failed to set. It doesn't accuse, but it makes everything undeniably clear. The things you thought you had buried begin to surface, not to haunt you, but to be understood. And that's the part most people misunderstand. Healing is not time's job, it's yours. Time simply creates the space where truth can no longer hide. It strips away distraction, removes noise, and leaves you alone with what is real. And in that silence, you are given a choice. Continue pretending, or finally confront what has been waiting all along. It's uncomfortable, sometimes even painful, but it is also necessary, because you cannot heal what you refuse to see. So when time exposes the cracks, it is not destroying you, it is showing you exactly where you need to rebuild. Not as who you were, but as someone more aware, more grounded, and far more honest. And maybe that's the real gift of time. Not that it heals you, but that it reveals everything required for you to finally heal yourself. The problem begins when we misunderstand what time is actually doing to us. We sit back and wait, believing that with enough days, weeks, or months, everything will somehow fix itself. We tell ourselves to be patient, to let time do the work. But while we are waiting, something dangerous happens. We adapt to the pain instead of resolving it. What once felt unbearable slowly becomes familiar. What once kept us awake at night becomes something we carry quietly during the day. And in that quiet acceptance, we mistake numbness for healing. That's where the real problem lives. Because when pain is not confronted, it doesn't disappear, it transforms. It hides in our habits, in our reactions, in the way we trust or struggle to trust again. It shows up in overthinking simple things, in pushing people away without clear reasons, or holding on to what no longer feels right just because it once did. Unresolved truth has a way of leaking into everything. You may think you've moved on, but then a small moment of familiar place, a certain song, a passing memory, suddenly brings everything rushing back. Not because time failed, but because the wound was never truly understood in the first place. And so, the cycle continues. We distract ourselves. We stay busy. We fill our time with noise, hoping silence won't catch up to us. But silence always catches up. And when it does, it doesn't come gently. It arrives with clarity, forcing us to see what we avoided, the conversations we never had, the boundaries we never set, the truths we refuse to admit. Another problem is the stories we tell ourselves. We rewrite the past to make it easier to carry. We convince ourselves that it wasn't that bad, or that it was meant to happen that way. And while those thoughts may comfort us temporarily, they often keep us stuck in patterns we don't even realize we're repeating. Because without honesty, there is no real progress. The hardest part is this: facing the truth requires responsibility. It asks us to admit that not everything that hurt us was outside of our control. Sometimes we stayed too long. Sometimes we ignored what we already knew. Sometimes we chose comfort over clarity. And that realization can be heavy, but avoiding it only makes things heavier over time. So the real problem is not the pain itself. It is the illusion that time alone will fix it. Because time will pass regardless. But whether you grow or stay the same depends entirely on what you choose to face along the way. So now comes the part most people avoid: the strengthening. Not the kind that looks loud or impressive on the outside, but the kind that quietly rebuilds you from within. The kind that doesn't erase what happened, but transforms how it lives inside you. Because once you understand that time only exposes, and that avoidance is the real problem, you gain something powerful: awareness. And awareness is where real strength begins. You are no longer waiting to be healed. You are no longer hoping things will magically change. You begin to take ownership of your own restoration. And that shift changes everything. Strength is not pretending you are okay. It is having the courage to admit that you are not tanned, choosing to face it anyway. It's in the moments where you sit with your thoughts instead of running from them. It's in choosing honesty over comfort, even when honesty feels heavier. It's in setting boundaries, even if it means disappointing others, to finally respect yourself. This is where you stop being controlled by what hurts you. Because the truth is, what you face loses its power to control you. What you understand no longer confuses you. And what you accept can finally be released. That doesn't mean it becomes easy. There will still be days when the past feels close, when emotions return without warning, when you question whether you've really made progress. But strength is built exactly in those moments, not when everything feels fine, but when everything feels uncertain and you still choose to stand firm. You begin to respond differently. Where you once overthought, you now observe. Where you once held on, you now let go. Where you once stayed silent, you now speak with clarity. And slowly, almost quietly, your life begins to shift. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because you become stronger in how you move through it. You stop seeking closure from others and start creating it within yourself. You stop needing validation and start trusting your own understanding. You stop chasing what feels familiar and start choosing what feels right. That is real growth. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all is this: you were never weak for feeling deeply. You were never broken for struggling to let go. You were simply in the process of becoming, learning, unlearning, and rebuilding parts of yourself that were shaped without your permission. Now, you move differently. Not rushed, not desperate, not dependent on time to fix you, but grounded, aware, and intentional. Because in the end, strength is not about forgetting what happened. It's about no longer being defined by it. So what is the solution? When time doesn't heal and avoidance only deepens the wound, the solution is not something external. It is not found in waiting longer, distracting yourself more, or hoping circumstances will change. The solution is a process, intentional, uncomfortable, but ultimately freeing. It begins with one decision: to face what you have been avoiding. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelms you, but honestly. You sit with it. You allow the thoughts to come without immediately pushing them away. You stop running from the questions that keep returning, and instead, you start answering them with clarity. What actually hurt you? Why did it affect you the way it did? What part of it are you still holding on to? This is where understanding replaces confusion. Because once you can name the pain, it becomes something you can work with, not something that controls you from the shadows. The next step is acceptance. Not approval, not agreement, but acceptance of reality as it is. You acknowledge what happened without trying to rewrite it or soften it to make it easier to carry. You stop negotiating with the past and start grounding yourself in the present. This is difficult, but necessary, because you cannot move forward while mentally trying to go back and change something that is already finished. Then comes responsibility. This is not about blaming yourself for everything, but recognizing where your power lies now. You may not have controlled what happened, but you do control what happens next. You take back that control by setting boundaries, by choosing differently, and by no longer repeating patterns that once felt familiar but harmful. You begin to act with awareness. If something feels wrong, you no longer ignore it. If something drains you, you no longer justify it. If something no longer aligns with who you are becoming, you let it go, even if it once meant everything. And finally, you replace. You don't just remove what hurt you fill that space with something better, healthier habits, clearer thinking, stronger self-respect. You build routines that support your growth, not your avoidance. Because empty space often pulls you back to old patterns, but intentional space moves you forward. This is not a quick process. There will be moments where you feel like you've made progress, and others where it feels like you've gone backward. That's part of it. Growth is not linear, it's layered. Each time you revisit something, you understand it differently, more deeply, more clearly, and that is progress. So, the real solution is this: face it, understand it, accept it, take responsibility. Replace it with something better. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. Because in the end, healing is not something time gives you. It is something you build, step by step, choice by choice, until one day you realize what once controlled you no longer has a place in who you are becoming. So here is the message you need to hold on to. When everything feels uncertain, when the past feels heavy, and when progress feels invisible, you are not stuck. You are in the middle of a process that most people are too afraid to even begin. It may not look like growth. It may not feel like progress. But the fact that you are aware, that you are questioning, that you are no longer blindly repeating the same patterns, that alone is movement. And movement, no matter how small, is still forward. Do not underestimate the strength it takes to face yourself. Because the hardest battles are not fought in the open, they are fought in silence. In your thoughts, in your decisions, in the moments where no one is watching, and you are left alone with your truth. That is where real change happens. You won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel strong. And there will be days when it feels easier to go back to who you used to be. But remember this: going back may feel familiar, but it will never move you forward. You didn't come this far just to return to patterns that once broke you. You didn't learn all these lessons just to ignore them when they mattered the most. You are allowed to outgrow what once felt like home, even if it confuses people, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it means walking a path that no one around you fully understands. Because growth often looks like isolation before it looks like transformation. Trust the process you are in, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. Every moment of clarity you gain, every boundary you set, every truth you accept, you are rebuilding yourself into someone more aware, more grounded, and more aligned with who you are meant to be. And that version of you, it does not beg for clarity. It does not chase validation. It does not settle for confusion disguised as comfort. It stands firm. So if today feels heavy, let it be heavy, but do not let it stop you. If today feels unclear, let it be unclear, but do not let it turn you back. Keep moving, keep choosing better. Keep facing what others avoid. Because one day, you will look back not with regret, not with pain, but with understanding. And you will realize something powerful. You didn't just survive what you went through. You transformed because of it. And that is your power. And now, after everything you've heard, everything you felt, and everything that may have quietly shifted inside you, this is where it becomes real. Because words alone don't change a life. Decisions do. So don't just let this be something you listened to. Don't let it become another message that felt deep for a moment, then slowly faded as your day went on. Pause for a second. Breathe. Ask yourself honestly, what is one thing you've been avoiding that you know you need to face? Not tomorrow, not someday, but starting now? Because clarity doesn't come to those who wait, it comes to those who are willing to confront. And if something in this message spoke to you, if even a small part of it felt like it was describing your own story, then take that as a sign, not a coincidence, not just relatable content, but a reminder that you are ready for something more. Ready to think differently, ready to act differently, ready to become someone who no longer runs from the truth. But here's the thing, don't have to do it alone. There are others out there who are on the same path, facing the same battles, growing through the same process. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stay connected to reminders that keep you grounded and focused. So if this message gave you value, if it made you reflect, or even challenge the way you see your own situation, take a small action. Stay connected. Be part of something that reminds you again and again of who you are becoming. Support this kind of message so it can reach more people who might need it just as much as you did today. And more importantly, don't just scroll away and forget. Carry this with you. Let it shape your next decision. Let it guide your next step. Let it remind you, when things feel uncertain, that you are not lost, you are evolving. And if you're ready to keep growing, to keep learning, and to keep facing life with more awareness and strength, make sure you stay here. Because this is not the end of your journey. This is just the point where you finally start taking it seriously.